Resin Armory. This is part 2 of forging the Grabber's Mask from the Black Phone. If you haven't seen part 1, go check it out here, or here, where I show you how to do all the sculpting. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to turn a sculpt into a mold, and a mold into a mask. Kindly sit back, relax, and let's begin. We've once again heated up our monster clay medium, and it is quite satisfying to mold in this state while it is still warm. of the white half and 50% of the orange half. I love using Rebound 25. It's my favorite silicone for making molds. And I'm just brushing on this first layer here after stirring thoroughly, making sure to get in all the crevices. Unfortunately, this was actually old. You can see, as a fresh layer, it's usually quite runnier, and even the color's a bit brighter. So hopefully our mold turns out alright, because we were using a bit perhaps expired silicone, but live and learn, I suppose. Now we're adding a few drops of Thivax. The ratio is 4 drops per mixed ounce of silicone, and Thivax is a silicone thickening agent. So what that'll do is make it sort of a peanut butter-like consistency, make our mold walls nice and thick and durable, so that they will stand the test of time, and presumably you'll be able to reuse these and recast with these indefinitely. I'm now using some aluminum foil to create a dividing line for a mold jacket, and notice I am duct taping it to the mannequin head itself, as opposed to the silicone, because nothing sticks to silicone except for silicone. I had some lovely footage of cutting fiberglass cloth to make a mold jacket, but unfortunately it was corrupted. However, the audio from it is still quite nice and crisp, so I think I'll just play it over this section despite there not being any video for it. Going in now with some well-stirred epoxy coat in gray, and that will serve as the first layer of our lightweight mold jacket, working one half at a time. And now we're using that fiberglass cloth and some epoxamite 102, and it's a lot like paper mache. You just add little pieces here and there until you cover the entire surface. We wait about 24 hours, but you don't quite have to wait that long. It could be, I would say, 18 to be safe for this to dry. And then we are going to repeat the process on the other side. So again with the epoxy coat, and then again with the epoxamite and fiberglass cloth. Putting some dowels between the halves, some thin dowels, to ensure they'll be able to separate later. Now we are demolding and trimming some excess silicone off of our mold. Be sure to be careful when you demold. Don't want to rip any of your hard work. We've got a few rough edges from the fiberglass, so before we can cast with this, it is wise to Dremel or sand those edges down to ensure we don't cut our hands, because they will cut you through the latex gloves. So I'm taking my Dremel 3000, which I've also got linked in the description, and we're just working over some of those problematic areas, flipping the silicone inside out so we can wash it in a sink. Water's just fine. And then we're going to flip it back the other way, and you'll hear the lovely sound of those silicone pieces popping into place. Now we're going in with some 70% isopropyl alcohol. I'd use 70% over the 90 or 99%, just because that might be a bit harsh. And we're going to, this is actually will be some good practice for the type of casting we're about to do, but we're just going to roll this around inside the mask, and that will help dissolve any remaining bits of clay that might be stuck in there, as we'd like to have those out before we start casting. And another thing to note, do wait for this alcohol to evaporate entirely before you begin casting. You don't want moisture inside your mold prior to casting, as it has the potential to mess up the clean lines of your cast. I've got some disposable cups here. You can use anything that you don't mind wrecking, and we're going to be mixing now our Smooth Cast 65D, also from Smooth On. This is my favorite resin to cast in because it's semi-rigid, so it's a really nice consistency, not brittle, but also not quite super pliable either. And do be sure to wear gloves here. This stuff dries when it cures. It begins to get quite hot, and it's very bad to get on your skin, so do wear gloves. Really, I should be wearing full sleeves here, but I'm a bit silly, so don't be like me. Take better preparations and precautions yourself. The other thing I like about Smoothcast 65D is that it dries white, which makes painting things a breeze. Get some sounds of those latex gloves in there. I don't know if that's something you guys like. Let me know in the comments. Now we're going to be pouring equal parts into each cup. If you're new to this, I highly recommend you actually measure parts A and B separately to ensure you're getting equal parts. The cap was stuck there, but that's nothing our trusty heat gun can't solve. So we heat it up so that we can unscrew it now. But yes, the parts need to be equal, or as close to that as possible, for the resin to cure properly. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm pretty good at eyeballing things. But if this is something you're new to, I would say definitely use a measuring cup of sorts, like we used for the silicone, as it were. So now, like I said, we're just pouring those equal halves, and this stuff, you want to be sure to stir it well prior to the casting. Make sure the parts are mixed completely, inseparably from one another. So we're just pouring part B into part A directly, and to mix it, we're actually going to use the very same chip brush we used to put that silicone or epoxamite and epoxycoat in place. The back of it, they really make great stirring implements, and you're throwing them out anyway, so it's nice to get a second use out of them. Stirring. This stuff is a bit viscous, but we want to be certain that we get it very well mixed to ensure that our mask cures as well as it possibly can. Now we're slush casting, and this is something I can't help you out with a ton. You just kind of have to get a feel for it. But the general motion that you're looking to do is something like this. Making sure you get it in all parts. I generally like to do the one coat to cover everything. One coat for the left and right side individually, and then one coat for the bottom and one coat for the top individually. And when we're done, it should look something like this, nice and thick. You can kind of press against the sides to make sure it's thick enough. So we can start the demolding process. We're just going to begin carefully removing that silicone, much like we did from the sculpt itself, to ensure we don't rip it from that newly cast resin mask. Go slow. You don't need to do anything super special here, but take your time and make sure that you are being a lot of the hard work you've done and you may have to recast the mask. So just be mindful about how much you're removing and try it on between attempts to see what areas need more removing. You can see here we've got a few imperfections. I think those did arise actually as a result of that maybe a bit too old silicone. So I'm just going in with a needle, just a big needle, and scraping it, and then some 400 grit sandpaper, and sanding down any of those areas that we scratched up with that big old needle. You can see on this previous mask I made, which I made very quickly because Halloween was approaching, it's actually a little bit lopsided due to the shape of the mold. So to fix that on this better version that we're making now, that we're not rushed to make by a deadline, we're just going to put our heat gun on that high setting. And I don't know if you can see how lopsided it is in the video, but in person you can definitely tell. So we're just going to move over that area. Don't stick in one area too long, and be sure not to touch the tip of the heat gun to the resin. And then we're just going to press that resin in, and being mindful not to burn ourselves, but we should just be able to reshape the mask to a shape that's a bit more symmetrical. Trying it on in between here. And I like the look of that. It's definitely a lot better than our first attempt. I'm not terribly fond of the paint job on this original mask. I don't think it's terrible or anything like that, but as a result of having to rush, it's certainly not my best work, and I think that a lot of the details were a bit hurried. So I'm quite excited to bring you part 3 of this video series, where I'll show you an in-depth tutorial on how to paint every fine detail of a mask like this and weather it to perfection. So please like and subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.